Mofield with the oral history microphone, and today we're visiting over in Lake City, Kentucky, in the home of Mr. and Mrs. Frank Ashley. I remember when Frank had a wholesale produce house, and he was all around Marshall County, and he had a son that played basketball, but I don't remember a lot about him, and perhaps you don't either. So we're going to take time today to just find out as much as we can about him. And we want to include his great work with the Chamber of Commerce, and we'll get around to all that in a minute. Frank, thanks for letting me come.
Thank you, Ray. Proud to have you.
And first of all, we'll ask where you were born.
I was born in McCracken County in 1909.
Adjacent to Marshall, and what part of it? Was it out in the county
No,
part
I was
or
born,
in Paducah?
I was born in Paducah.
In Paducah.
And, on Park Avenue,
Uh-huh.
17th and Park Avenue.
Now, your father was...
Joe Ashley.
And your mother?
Mother was Sally Ashley.
Sally Ashley.
And they're both buried down at Palestine Graveyard in McCracken County today.
Well, now, that's out, what, toward Heath?
That's towards Grimble, just on the
Grimble,
road, on the road
okay.
to, just as you go under the railroad track, what's known as the Edgewood Cutoff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on the right as you go under there where my father and mother's buried.
Do you remember anything about any of your grandparents? Did you?
The only thing I know about my grandparents, my grandpa Ashley was wounded at Shiloh, and they moved from
That is a Civil War battle.
Civil War.
Yeah.
And they moved to when he got out of the Civil War, he came to Bolivar, Tennessee, and then out to Salisbury, and there's where he raised his family. That was my mother and father was raised there. I really never saw my grandparents, never saw on my father's side.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on my mother's side, it was Sanders, and they also lived at Grand Junction, Tennessee. And I saw my grandfather on my mother's side, but I never did see my mother, my grandmother, never saw her. And
All right, now, where did you go to school, Frank, in elementary school?
I went to Pleasant Ridge, it's out to Cairo Road from Paducah, about 3 miles out.
Mm-hmm.
And I attended grade school there until I got out of the 8th grade.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's wonderful. It's kind of what we called, it might have been a two-room school, but we called them one-room schools.
That's right. I had a big room and a little room, and the first, second, third, and fourth grade was in the little room, and then your 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th was in the big room. And,
Do you remember any of your teachers?
Oh, yes. Miss Ruth Daniels was my first teacher. I remember her. And Ralph Carr, which came from Livingston County, and married one of the Schaefer girls, which he boarded with next door.
Mm-hmm.
And Mr. Hill is still living over in Arkansas someplace. I don't know whereabouts over there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 3 I can remember.
Very good. All that.
And
That memory's as sharp as it ever was.
I remember Miss Ruth Daniels had long hair, and when she could sit down, she could sit on it.
Mm-hmm.
As my school teacher.
Was discipline fairly strict back?
Well, it was really strict. In other words, you didn't talk in school, or you didn't. When time books come, and you had one class right after another, and you'd mind the teacher. I got a few whippings.
I was going to ask you that.
Yeah.
I got several, if I told the truth, and they didn't damage me all that much, but they did get my attention.
Well, I got news for you. Ralph Carr, he was one of my school teachers. He cut the blood out of my legs. And I got all of mine for fighting. One that I didn't get my lessons. I made good grades.
Mm-hmm.
But, boy, I'd fight a circus saw, and I got all of them for fighting.
Well, I was always laughing out loud and disturbing the class.
I never got nothing. I was in time books. They didn't even correct me, nothing. I know it's perfect. But out on the schoolyard, I would get into it with everybody. Not everybody, but a certain few.
What, do you remember any games you played out?
Oh, we played basketball. Well, that's one of the games we played.
Yeah.
And then we played Wolf Over the River. You might not never heard of it.
Oh, I remember that.
And that was 2. But basketball, we went down to Darden's garage at West Paducah,
Mm-hmm.
and we had goals made out of wagon tires.
Yeah.
Then we came back up, and us boys put them together and put them up, put the boards up, and put up the post. And then our basketball didn't have but one, and it had seams on the outside, and we played on the ground, and the whole entire time.
Did your dad farm?
Oh yes, he was a farmer. In other words, he run the Noble farm for years and years, and at the present time, just yesterday, I saw Buster Carroll, which is Julian Carroll's father.
Oh yeah, I know Buster.
And he was at Dr. Hogenkamp's office. Buster was getting in bad shape, and I was talking to him about it. And he run the Noble farm after my father run it. And the Noble farm was located right where I-24 bridge crosses the Ohio River. Right down under the bridge is where we eat dinner at what they call a campground. You know, your mother and father your mother brought you dinner in a basket to the fields, and you eat dinner in the fields. Yeah.
Those were long days, weren't
Oh,
they?
they just lasted from sun to sun. Whatever time the sun come up, and what time it went down.
And in the middle of June, that's 15 hours.
Yeah, that's right. That's a long time. Yeah.
So,
Sure it
it's
is.
quite a day. You grew corn and
Yeah.
wheat and tobacco, probably.
Yeah, we grew very little tobacco, because most on this Noble farm, most of it was hay and corn, and had cattle. We fed cattle, and
Generally, they didn't put tobacco in the bottom
no,
much.
that's
did
right.
they?
The tobacco was raised on the hills. Yeah, we raised tobacco, but that was later on when we raised tobacco. I think the last crop of tobacco I helped raise in 1931 or 2, and we made 1,000-pound leaf to the acre, and we got an offer of 3 cents a pound for it, and my father put it in an association. We ain't heard from it since.
I guess a lot of people turned out that way, didn't
right.
they?
Sure
Didn't a whole year's work and
That's right.
nothing involved.
Nothing getting out of it at all. We had 4 acres of tobacco, which made around 4,000 pounds a leaf, and
Were you unlucky enough to be in any of the wars?
I spent almost 5 years in World War II. I spent 26 months in Europe and 16 months in the Philippine Islands.
So you were one of those fellows that hit
I was in invasion.
European theater
Yeah.
and
I was with the invasion of Dakar and Casablanca in Africa, and I was at Naples, and let's see.
that campaign up through Italy was a real tough one.
Yeah,
wasn't
that's where. See, when we landed over there, Mark Clark was a general, I think, and Rommel was a German general, and they called him the Desert Fox.
it? Yeah.
It's going on and on, but that's all a hard memory to remember. I don't remember much of it, but
Yeah.
that's the way it happened.
Well, tell me about how you met your wife.
Well, that is a very easy secret. When I got home service in 1945, I had to have a place to live. So I went to a boarding house. And that's what all you could get. You couldn't get a hotel or nothing. So I got this place at this boarding house to board. And luckiest to have it, she was boarding there too. She was working at the shoe factory, and I just got home. And I was working down for Peck Brothers, and we came out on the
Now,
front.
Peck had a wholesale grocery in Pacific.
No, a wholesale produce house.
Oh, produce,
That's what I
yeah.
was later,
Okay.
a produce man.
Yeah.
And we came out on the front porch, and it just pouring down rain. And I told her, I said, I've called a cab, and you girls, there's 2 girls and 2 boys. Galen King was with me. He lived at Sharp. And I told them, I said, I've got a cab. I've ordered a cab. If you'll just wait a minute, you can ride. They said, well, thank you a lot, but said, we're going to walk. So they took off in the rain. I said, well, if y'all can walk in the rain, we can too. So we all took off in the rain. From there, we got acquainted and walking from the shoe factory, about 6, 7 blocks. I think we all got wet, I'm not sure.
Is she a native of this area?
Yes, she came from Shin Bridge Road. That's the name of it, Shin Bridge Road, out of Reedland. And she went to school at Reedland.
Mhm.
Yes, she's from down in there. Yeah.
Well, two good McCracken Countyans.
Yeah. Good.
Now, you worked for Peck's. About how long did you stay there?
I was only at Peck about a year and a half or 2 years.
All the time, though, you were learning the business.
Well, I'd worked before for Earl Humphreys. You might have heard of him. He was there before Peck.
Mhm.
Holly Hopkins, I worked for him. He was there before Earl Humphrey. And Barter and Golightly, they was the strawberry people. And I never really worked for them, but I worked with them.
Mhm.
And then the Peck was the last one I worked for. Well, naturally I learned the business, so I went in business for myself. And 1947 or 48, I forget which, was right after the war. And then I went in business at Reedland. And then I moved to Benton in 1947 or 48.
I guess you had several accounts in Marshall County even before you moved.
All of my accounts practically was in Marshall, but it wasn't in Marshall County. I had Murray. Well, in fact, the business I had Palma, I had Sharp, Palma, and Benton, and Hardin,
Mhm.
and Dexter, Almo,
Yeah.
and then Murray, and then Hazel, and then Paris, Tennessee. That's as far down as I went. And I'd turn around and come back. I made that territory, and of course, Benton was on. When I moved to Benton, I figured I would centralize my driving. In other words, my trucks would run out of Benton.
That would have been about the middle of the area you were covering.
Something near the middle of my
So
territory.
that made good economic
Yeah,
sense
yeah, that's the reason that I moved to
to
Benton.
operate out
Yeah.
of Benton.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about your children.
Well, I had three children. I've got a girl and two boys. And one of my boys works at Calvary City Plains. And the other is a warden over at the penitentiary at
Eddyville.
Eddyville. A farm center out at the farm.
Yeah.
And my daughter is she's partly a court stenographer at Eddyville, and she's also a lawyer's stenographer.
Mm-hmm.
And she worked for G.L. Obey. He's a lawyer over there. And she
Do you have any grandchildren, Frank?
two just lately. Three. Yeah, three. I had one. Yeah, I'm sorry, I got the oldest one.
Got one 19-year-old.
Got one 19 and one 3 and one 2.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's a prop on my grandchildren.
Now, what was this boy's name that was playing basketball about the time I was announcing?
Billy Don Ashley, and he was a good ball player. He played good, and he's believe it or not, his son, which is 19 now, that's my oldest one, and they are playing softball every day, every week now. Both of them,
Mm-hmm.
someplace. And my grandson is a real ball player. He might make a big leaguer someday. I doubt it, but he might do that.
Well, Frank, I know that you and Bill Tanner and I don't know how many others, I guess there were a lot of them, but I remember you and Bill in particular, were interested in building a Marshall County Chamber of Commerce. Now, how did you get interested in that?
Well, how I got interested in it, I was interested in seeing the lake progress. When I moved to Benton, from 1945 to 1965, Benton was as dormant as a tree that never bared any fruit. They hadn't done a thing in the world to promote those tourists. And Bill Tanner and Ryan King and well, these people were moving in. The strangers was coming in. Strangers wanted to see some progress. And we had Ralph Moore, and we had Will Lubiker, and we had Tom Brown, and we had Sid Job. And
Now, Tom Brown was over in Callaway.
that's right. We had Callaway County in it. So we set up what we called a Chamber of Commerce. And there had been one, I think, in some time before in Marshall County, but it had never been ratified. So we set up the Chamber of Commerce, and of course they wanted somebody to be a executive director of it. So I got promoted to that job, and I had it for 10 years. And we didn't only promote, we got the fishing derby started during the Chamber of Commerce, and we helped Ralph Moore. Ralph Moore at one time, he couldn't get no roads out there at all. In fact, he didn't get any roads out there except what he built till Marvin Prince got to be something over the Cambridge shores or something. Of course, he was county attorney, and then they got a little county help. We didn't get any till then.
Now, this fishing derby was sort of an effort to extend the time that people would come and vacation in the area.
That's right. George Ganner and Labe Jackson and Skillet R. I never did know Skillet Robinson. I never did know his right name, but he was the same as Shelby used to be. He was a representative.
Mm-hmm.
And they could see the potentials of Kentucky Lake, and they wanted to get a fall fishing derby, commence in the fall. And the people that caught the largest crappie, the largest bass, which it's actually going on today, just like it was back then.
Oh, I guess it's gotten
Oh,
bigger.
it is tremendously big now.
I read about a
Yeah.
woman not long ago
Yeah.
who caught a fish that paid a grand total
Yeah.
prizes. Seemed like, was it 30,000?
Something like that. It was way up there, yeah. And but the fishing, that's an offspring of this other. And of course, Sid Job and trying to think of the man's name, was it? I have a hard time. Paul Brown was one of them, but the other one had Irving Cobb Resort. Who was that had that? Got on.
Well, I can't think of it myself right
He
now.
was on Red River.
Mm-hmm.
And so they decided that they would do what they got the land between the lakes, or it was later come on. So they just sprung off of this other and started a kind of a fishing derby on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember too much about that, because it started in 1962 after
Mm-hmm.
this other had been going on. I was chairman of the fishing derby for 4 years, and
Now, what were some of your big problems? Did you run into a thing like people would say, oh, well, I'm a member of the Greater Paducah Chamber, and...
we had that, and we also had most everybody that joined the Chamber of Commerce thought if they joined today, the cash register ought to ring tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that's not the way it works. And there was a lot of people. You take Ralph Moore and Will Lubiker and almost all the people on the lakes were good members and stayed right in there and fought the way through it. There was Tom Brown, Sid Job, and Lubiker, and Will Lubiker. He's dead now, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And Tennessee Jones and Ralph Moore and
You know, Tom Brown always reminded me of a Kentucky colonel. He
dressed like one.
Yeah, he'd wear that
Yeah.
suit, and he had let his chin whiskers grow
Yeah.
out. And
Yeah,
he really looked the part, didn't he?
He sure did. He dressed like one, and he looked like one. And then while that was going on, Pete Gunn and I went up was out with. He had a couple of kids, and I had 3. You know Pete Gunn.
Oh yes, I know Pete.
So we was up in the park one Thanksgiving. I mean Easter,
Mhm.
one Easter, and we were hiding Easter eggs for our kids.
Mhm.
So we decided, Pete and I did, that we'd have Easter egg hunt. So we set up an Easter egg hunt, Pete Gunn and I did. And that hunt growed to where it had 5 or 6 or 10 or 15,000 people, and it took 22,000 eggs to hide enough for those people.
I believe Shelby helped you on that.
Shelby
bit,
helped,
didn't he?
Shelby helped on that. That's right. And
The radio station's
Yeah.
always been cooperative.
Bunny Bread was in that, and Shelby was very helpful in about anything we had going on, and I could say that there wasn't very much help come out of, as far as the Chamber of Commerce is concerned. We got very little help for them. After a while, we got some, but very little help out of Benton for years.
Mhm.
I told you that lay dormant from
Yeah.
1945 to 1965.
Well, I remember attending a speech one time that didn't go over too well with a lot of people, but Joe Creason came down to speak from Louisville. He was still living then. And I remember that he said that we ought to do more in Marshall County, that so many of the things that had happened to the county that made it more prosperous had just dropped in our laps like fruit falling off a tree.
That's
Just
exactly right.
nature.
That's exactly right. You take in, and I forget the year, we had, Ward Oates was highway engineer, and Chandler was governor, and so we had George Ganner, he was in there somewhere, and we built Harry Lee Waterfield's Park, which is there today, up on
Mhm.
68.
Right at Jonathan Creek.
Right at Jonathan Creek, we built that, and this is through the Chamber of Commerce, and we was wanting to get a 4-lane road into Benton. Well, it was all set up for a 4-lane road to come in at Draffinsville, go right straight over the hill, not like the curve is now.
Mm-hmm.
And took the dog leg out completely. There was no houses, not a house through there, nothing. And it could have been built for $2 or $3 million. And they wouldn't take the diagonal parking off of downtown, and it fell through. Because you can kill something a lot easier than you can get it built.
Yeah.
And so the reality of a 4-lane road into Benton would have been a reality in 1959, and here it is 89, and they ain't gonna have it then.
Well, Frank, I know you've had some health problems, and I haven't seen you lately. You've, when did you leave Benton? I guess you were living
I left
there.
in 1962 and came over here and built me a fruit market, and I growed like a butterweed. And in fact, I went broke in Benton, and I had to leave. And they sold my home out from under me, and I didn't have a chance. So I came over here and built me a fruit market without any money, started on nothing, and I growed like a butterweed. I grew to what you see today. And in 1965, I had a heart attack. And after I had my heart attack, why, I went to trying to sell it out. In other words, in 1979, I sold out, and ever since then I've been retired. Of course, that in 1979, I think I was 70 years old, and
Mm-hmm.
so I haven't. I stay pretty busy. I got a garden, and I got a few friends in Benton. I've got Charlie Hatcher. He comes over. Charlie Carroll comes over, and Bill Tanner. He'll always be my friend, and of course. Bill Butler's gone. You know, he was one that helped us with the Chamber of Commerce too.
Mm-hmm.
And but
You certainly have a beautiful place here. You say you try to make a garden still?
yeah, I make. We got 2 pretty nice gardens. My wife and I have, but they're over in the holler
Mm-hmm.
over here. And then I own some land over in Lyon County too. I got a garden over there, over close to Iron Hill. You know, who heard of Iron Hill?
Yes, sir. I've heard of that.
And I own some land over there too.
Now, you have sort of what, tourist or cabins that rent by the week or something?
No, I have a trailer park. I've got 6 trailers,
Mm-hmm.
and the trailers belongs to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I rent them by the month, and most of them are to people that, well, a man and his wife is in one, the rest of them have just got 1 or 2 boys in them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just, they rent them by the month, and I pay all the utilities. Yeah, and I pay all the they don't pay nothing. All they do is pay me the rent.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't pay the utilities, you have trouble when they move off and leave it. You got to go to Paducah to get it set up again.
Yeah.
So if you pay them yourself, you don't have to worry about it.
Well, you've seen many of your dreams for the Kentucky Lake region come true, I'm sure.
Well, certainly, and when it did start to mushroom, it done fine. You see, at one time, TVA wanted, if I understand this right, TVA wanted to build a road from Ken Bar Ken Lake to Kentucky down.
Mhm.
And they tried to get the physical court to buy the right-of-way around the contour of the 172 or 75 feet and get the contour, and the physical court said they didn't want no such crooked road as that in Marshall County, so they didn't get it.
Mhm.
And I don't think it would have been, I thought it would have been an asset to have a road all the way
It'd
around.
been a very scenic thing.
That's
wouldn't
what it
it?
would have been,
Yeah.
being very scenic.
On a small scale, like
Yeah.
the Blue Ridge Parkway. or-
That's right, and on top of that, it put cherry trees on it, and it bloomed, and
Boy, what a
decorated.
drive in the spring
That's
and
right.
in the fall.
That's right.
Yeah.
And but he didn't get it. I tell you, you can certainly kill something a lot easier than you can get it. Because there's always somebody else wants it if you don't.
And now you've had those dreams, and as I said, many of them have come true. Do you see what do you see down the road for this area? Will it continue to improve? Or?
I think that Market Lake will continue to improve, and Kentucky Lake will continue to improve, both of them. Land between the lakes will continue to improve, but the main thing we need today is to clean the lakes up. These lakes are filthy. They've dumped the sewage in it for all up and down it, and they're when I was running the emergency unit, which I run it for 10 years, I drug out over 100 dead bodies out of that lake. And those bodies would be so slick and slimy you couldn't hold to them after they was in there 24 hours. And that lake's dirty. And in fact, it's really not good to swim in today, regardless of who goes in or don't go in it.
Now you were among the people who organized that, I guess.
I was among the people who organized the emergency unit. The man that organized it was, he's dead now, he's Undertaker down there. What is his name?
Well, there was a man in Paducah that started some civil defense.
well,
Frank.
Yeah, Frank. Yeah, that's a civil defense.
Frank
It come up to Benton. He was with the Army or somebody.
Yeah.
And Ray Lynn, and he came up to see Ray Lynn, and Ray Lynn called me and asked me would I come down. I said yes, and I went down. And it's Frank, somebody you're talking about. That's exactly right.
Was it Frank Steele?
Frank Steele. That's right. That's right. And I went down to Ray Lynn's, and we decided we'd set up what we called that civil defense.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't last but a few days. We called it the emergency unit because we were busy at the lake all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And for 10 years we had that, and we operated that without any money, and we'd have to, say we come to your place to drag for a dead body, you'd furnish the gasoline while we went out to get them. So we finally got they give us a boat. The conservation did, Kentucky.
Mm-hmm.
Lave Jackson gave us a boat. And then we finally bought a boat. We had turkey shoots down on North Benton, was all where Leon Riley is now.
Mm-hmm.
That was a field. Wasn't in there. We'd have
Mm-hmm.
have turkey shoots down there. And so we operated without anything at all. But we got Reuben Redden to build us a block house down on the city property. So we didn't have enough money to pay Reuben Redden off. So he hired John Clay Lovett to sue the emergency unit, and of course we didn't have a thing.
Yeah.
John Clay sued him, and we went to the Bank of Marshall County and borrowed the $1,500 and got them off our back.
Yeah, well, that was quite a start. Well, you know, the time has just raced away. We've got time maybe for about 30 seconds sign off. Do you have any particular one thing you'd like to say before we leave?
Well, the only thing I would like to say in particularly that I would like to see Marshall County grow. It has grown with the things down here, but you can tax people till they can't stay in it. That's the end of my
End of your sermon.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much, Frank Ashley. It's real nice to visit you and your wife. This is Ray Mofield with the Oral History Microphone. We return you now to our studio in Benton.